my background, I grew up on Wall Street, graduated from college, went right to the street, did sales and trading for a few years, transitioned to pharmaceuticals. I worked in healthcare. I worked on legislation in Washington and Albany. And then I returned back to the corporate sector and headed up talent management for organizations like Johnson & Johnson and Morgan Stanley. And it was about 15 years that I was in the corporate sector. So I definitely built up skill sets while I was in corporate. I never turned down that opportunity to actually experience what it was like to be in a super robust environment, what it was like to work in an industry that was heavy male dominated, what it was like to be the only Latina in the room, because it allowed me to grow some thick skin. I'm also from New York City, so that has definitely helped as well to allow me to become comfortable in my skin and to really build confianza, confidence, so that when I became an entrepreneur, I already had some foundational skill sets that I could leverage to help me in this space, right? So 15 years in the corporate sector, about 6 years ago is when I started my business. And I started my business because I wasn't able to get any other corporate gig. So I was laid off from my last corporate job, and they wanted to relocate me to Tampa. Now, for those of you who don't know me well enough, I'm a Miami girl. I mean, can you tell, honey? So Tampa is not really my vibe. No shade to Tampa, but it really wasn't a good fit. And so I decided that I wanted to go look for a new gig. And so I started interviewing at a number of different firms. And I quickly found out that perhaps this corporate thing isn't for me because I wasn't able to close the deal. And I'm a closer, y'all. So I was like, okay, what is God trying to tell me? What is the universe trying to tell me? And I said, you know what? I've got savings. Let me bet on myself and see how far I can go. Worst case scenario, I have this 15-year kind of credibility block that I can use. I have this amazing network that I can leverage. So worst case, I'll always be able to find a job. So I started my first business where I was doing interview training and resume reviews, right? Because when I was in corporate, I was doing talent management, I was doing recruiting. So this was a skill set that I built up very quickly. Also, I just thought about this. When I was in college, shout out to Baruch, I was in the Career Development Center. They had a program called Peers for Careers, and I actually would help students how to do their resumes as well as prep for interviews. So it's so interesting that was the first business that I launched. And so I started doing interview training and resume reviews, and I was doing that for a while, and I was making money. And then I was invited to attend this conference in Napa, California. And it was amazing because it was a Latino-led conference. Shout out to the Hype, shout out to Richard and everyone in the family. And they allowed me to go on the strength of me being a new entrepreneur. And this conference is expensive, y'all. And so they allowed me to go, all expenses paid, because, you know, part of the mission and vision of that organization is to support Latinos in any endeavor. Whether you're an entrepreneur or you're a professional, they are there to help you get in the right rooms and help you take advantage of opportunities for you to expand and for you to level up. And that's exactly what I did when I went to that conference. I had the honor to meet a number of incredible Latino entrepreneurs as well as Latinos in the corporate sector. And there was one gentleman in particular that I had the honor and pleasure of sitting down with and just picking his brain. His name is Angel Gomez. Shout out to Angel if you're watching this or listening to this. And he sat down and he broke down the game to me about how to go after corporate business, how to go after corporate contracts. And when he broke it down to me, I was like, what does that even mean? Like, what do you mean corporate contracts? Like, how do you do that? And the reason why I was interested is because he told me he was able to make 6 figures off of one contract. And I was like, espérate un momento, like here I am doing interview training and resume reviews, and that was cool, but it definitely wasn't pulling in 6 figures, right? So I was like, how can I learn more? So I started asking him questions about how he was able to do this. And what is the game? Like, what is the strategy? How do I position myself to go after these type of corporate contracts? And he literally spent, I would say, an hour and a half with me, like breaking down the game and putting me on and sharing how he's been able to grow his business pretty much through speaking engagements and locking in these corporate contracts. So as soon as I had that conversation, something shifted in me. I realized very quickly that if I wanted to accelerate, if I wanted to actually secure the big bag, I needed to seriously consider a B2B business model. Business to business selling. B2B means selling from one business to another business versus just B2C, which is what I was doing interview training and resume reviews, right? I was B2C. I was selling directly to a consumer versus selling my intellect and my intellectual property, right, to another business, right? So I said, okay, boom, shift, light bulb. Okay, so how do I now package my expertise to go out and sell to these other businesses, right? So all these things I started thinking, I started considering, I started looking at my own business model and thinking about, okay, how can I shift? How can I make things happen? And ironically enough, when I was on the interview trail, because remember I told you my last corporate job, they wanted to lay me off or have me go to Tampa. So I was still interviewing with jobs before I decided that I was going to pursue entrepreneurship full time. And so I went on an interview with this amazing woman who was working at the largest asset manager in the world. And I had an interview with her, and the role just didn't really seem like a fit at the time. And she knew that, I knew that, but we kept in contact, right? She followed me on LinkedIn. She was starting to see my posts. And at that time, shortly after that interview is when I really decided that I was going to double down on entrepreneurship. So now, you know, our first interaction was her actually hiring for a role on her team. We realized it wasn't a fit, but now she's engaged with me on LinkedIn and she's seeing that I have now transitioned and am pursuing entrepreneurship. So fast forward 6 months. This is now after Napa. This is now after I had that interview with her. This is now when I decided to pursue entrepreneurship full time. She calls me and she said, hey, there's another role open. Are you still looking? And I said, no, I'm not. I actually have decided to double down and invest in myself and start a consulting business. And she said, okay, well, best of luck to you. I'll keep that in mind if any opportunities come up here. I said, okay, boom, click. Not thinking anything would come about it, but surely enough, a month later, she hits me up and she's like, hey, some executives here are seeking out a consultant to build out an onboarding program. Are you interested? And I said, hell yeah, I'm interested. Like, tell me the scoop. Like, what's up? What's the in and outs? And she set me up. She set me up to come in and essentially pitch my idea and interview for that opportunity. Went on a couple of meetings and the rest is history.